Welcome to Rock Docs, a podcast about music documentaries. This is Dave. This is part of our 2022 summer rerun series. What you're about to hear is our 2021 episode about Beats, Rhymes, and Life, The Travels of a Tribe Called Quest, directed by Michael Rapaport. We loved the movie, and we hope you love this podcast episode. All right, welcome to Rock Docs, a podcast about movies, about music, where we discuss rock and roll and related music documentaries.
I thought you were going to say where we discuss movies about music.
This is the longest tagline.
Yeah.
I'm David Lizerbram.
Yeah. I'm Andy Keatts.
And today we are going to talk about Beats, Rhymes, and Life, The Travels of a Tribe Called Quest. But before we get to that, question. If they're going to make a 10-part mega documentary series...
Grateful Dead.
Not about the Grateful Dead.
Okay, sorry.
About an artist.
Uh-huh.
Like 10 hours.
10 hours of content, right?
About whom would it be?
It's got to be somebody who warrants that sort of treatment,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You got to have a lot to say.
It's not going to be Snow who did Informer.
Right. Or even, like TLC, a wonderful band.
Right, sure. Like,
Right.
I don't necessarily need 10 hours of Foo Fighters footage.
You're right. I mean, the list has got to be pretty... it's Bob Dylan. It's Bob Dylan.
Okay,
Yeah.
Make your case. I think 10 hours is insufficient to cover Bob Dylan, but,
Sir, I'm offended. 25 hours and not a minute less. Well, you got because you got to... You start in the folk era. You start in New York. You talk about the context of the political movement, protest songs,
right?
The folk revival. You can trace through his influence through the Byrds. You can talk. You can
right.
You can do his whole classic rock era with the band.
Right. You got a lot of different eras to cover. Easily 10 different eras worth covering.
10 different eras worth covering. We could do 3 hours on the Christian era and.
Please, I'm here for that.
I'm trying to figure out what it is.
It's great.
I still don't get it.
Big fan of the Christian era. Yeah. Unironically, I will tell you, there are so many good songs from that time period.
Right.
Get back to me on that.
So I don't know.
Covenant Woman, that's a killer song. Check that one out.
All right. Throw that on one of the Rock Docs podcasts or Rock Docs playlists. By the way, if you listen to this show and you have not been following along, we create playlists for all of the episodes that we release each week. We tweet them out. We share them on Instagram. Follow us on at RockDocs, right?
At RockDocsPod.
At RockDocsPod.
On Twitter and Instagram. And you just made the change you want to see in the world because now we have to go make the playlist by virtue of you saying that.
Yes. We're going to do it anyway. I don't know. It's got to be somebody that good. Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. I have the benefit of having thought of the question, so okay. I also spent time thinking of an answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
James Brown.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
I mean, this is like an American story.
Yes, that's true.
This is like you could have Ken Burns do 10 hours on James Brown.
You could, yeah. Oh, or like Little Richard.
Little Richard, yeah.
Little Richard would be thin. Little Richard probably just deserves a rock doc.
Sure. Oh, by all means.
Yeah.
God knows, but James Brown had a long career.
Yeah.
He was still making hits.
Died. He was performing right up until he died, basically.
Yeah. And I mean, the guy...
I saw him at Bonnaroo in 2003.
Okay. You saw James Brown.
I saw James Brown at like 11 a.m. outdoors at the main stage of Bonnaroo.
Like opening for Government Mule or something.
I honestly, that might be accurate.
Like that is just not right.
Yeah, if it wasn't Government Mule, it was Warren Haynes with the Allman Brothers.
Warren Haynes with somebody.
Yeah, well, Warren Haynes with James Brown probably.
Yeah, James. I'm telling you, 10-hour James Brown documentary.
Yeah, that would work.
I'm locked in on for that.
Yes, that would be very good.
It would be a heavy watch. I'm manifesting it into the world.
I mean, Dr. Dre basically got one.
Yeah.
On HBO.
Yeah. Exactly.
They like split it with Jimmy Iovine.
So yeah, but basically
Dr. Dre got one. Yeah.
All right, let's get into Beats, Rhymes, and Life, The Travels of a Tribe Called Quest, a 2011 movie directed by none other than
famed director, Michael Rapaport.
Michael Rapaport, who you might remember from such hits as Beautiful Girls,
Sure.
the next Friday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Michael Rapaport has a whole big acting career.
He does, and good movies.
Yeah.
Like lots of good
He's
movies.
also
and good performances in good movies.
He's a podcaster. He's a sports guy. He's a comedian. The guy does a lot of stuff.
Yes.
This is the only like feature documentary, like in movie theater type thing that he's ever done or film.
He did a 30 for 30.
Yeah. But, not to spoil the plot here, but it's good. Like, this does not look like some noob filmmaker who didn't know what he was doing put a movie together.
No, yeah. So I hadn't seen this movie when it first came out.
Yeah.
I knew of it. It made news. It was like
Right.
controversial in some ways.
Wait, hold on. Let's set the table here.
Yeah, okay.
What is this movie and who is A Tribe Called Quest?
Okay. So this movie is, I would say, also a classic rock doc.
Like a traditional biography of the group.
Full career biography.
Sure.
If you don't know one thing about the band when you turn the movie on, not a problem.
Yeah.
The band is a influential, popular alt hip hop, underground hip hop group from the late 80s, early 90s in New York, and very jazzy, very conscientious lyrics,
Right.
very controlled style,
Yeah.
and beloved.
Yeah.
Beloved by all hip hop artists.
There's there's not one person that I've ever heard of in the world of like hip hop, rap, whatever, anything adjacent to that, who ever has a bad thing to say about A Tribe Called Quest.
Yes, and
it's like not liking water.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. They were quite ahead of where hip hop was going at the time that they were coming out. Like they're like releasing their seminal albums in like the heart of NWA, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre owning what rap was at that moment.
Sure.
And they do not sound like that.
No.
They are a very New York style hip hop band,
right?
With boom bap beats that they are producing themselves,
right?
Cutting their own,
with like obscure jazz and soul samples,
yes,
and lyrical content that is. I mean, it's going to sound cheesy to say like that it's positive, like for the most part, like there's bragging and joking around and stuff like that, but it's not like about being hard in the streets for the most part. Right. It's like either kind of jokes or just kind of observations about the world around them, even stuff
like
about girls
sometimes.
Yeah, romantic, Afrocentric, political.
So their aesthetic was very Afrocentric, especially early in their career.
Sure.
Wearing dashikis and stuff.
Yeah. Now, the people in the tribe, who was A Tribe Called Quest? So you've got four members, two of whom are really like the most well known, right? Yeah. So the main kind of, if there's a leader of the pack, although everybody knows there is, and he disputes it, is Q-Tip, who was primarily the main lead rapper, producer, visionary, genius behind A Tribe Called Quest. I mean, I'm not saying anything anybody's really going to dispute.
I don't think that's controversial.
And then there
is another MC who is revered and beloved and will make top 5 lists of favorite MCs in the history of hip hop.
Right. Phife Dawg, who was, I guess at times kind of seen as like the sideman, the kind of like comedy.
He was more fun. He was more party. His lyrics were funnier. I think it would be
say, more street, more earthy. Now just to like get into it, like Q-Tip is a suave, chill dude,
tall,
handsome.
He goes on to have a Hollywood career.
Right.
He's got clear movie star good looks.
Right.
And the charisma that Hollywood execs were looking for when hip hop started breaking, and they were like, we can cast these dudes.
Yeah. But like a chill, relaxed, intellectual type of dude.
Yes.
And
which comes across in this movie.
Although also a control freak and a maniac. Yeah. But we'll get to that. Yeah. Phife is a he calls himself the 5-footer.
Yeah.
He's a short man. He's,
He's got type 1 diabetes.
He's got type 1 diabetes, as we get into a lot in this movie. He was not the, the intellectual of the group. I don't think anybody would, accuse him of that. He was more the guy messing around playing basketball in the streets. And, that type of dynamic was kind of the selling point. You've got this kind of smooth lover man, chill, psychedelic dude. And then you've got sort of like the, outcast dynamic where you've got like the kind of like weird dude and then the kind of that's a little bit more street.
There is a bit of an outcast dynamic. There's also, I gotta be honest, there's like Eagles dynamic.
Okay.
There's like a Glenn Fry and Don Henley dynamic.
So who's the Glenn Fry and who's the Don Henley here?
Glenn Fry is Fife Dog.
Okay. Glenn Fry is Fife Dog.
Yeah. Henley's like...
Sure. Sell me on this.
Well, I think so part of it, and this is casting, the history of the Eagles is making its introduction
yes.
into the Rock Doc canon today.
Yes. Okay.
All right? I sprung this on you, but...
People, you didn't see it coming.
The amount of tension between Tribe Called Quest is through the roof.
Yes.
Much like the Eagles.
Yes.
And it is similarly hard to pin down where it's coming from or why.
Right.
It creates unsatisfying explanations of why were these guys fighting so much?
Right.
There seems not to be any good answer to that question, right?
Yeah.
And that's true about both bands.
Yeah. Okay, so we've only covered 2 of the members.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's that. But I would say that Glenn Fry is not a great musician.
Okay. He's slicker than Fife, but okay, sure.
Where Henley is the one with the voice that carries the band.
Right. Okay.
And so it's not a perfect comparison, but I think Q-Tip is the one that if Q-Tip didn't start a band, Q-Tip was going to be a very successful human being in one thing or another.
Sure.
Q-Tip is
you could have started a tech company or
Could
something.
have started a tech company or something.
And he literally studied computer engineering in the 80s.
Yeah.
In high school.
I mean, all 4 of these guys, this is not to say that Fife Dog is not a smart guy.
No, not at all.
He comes across very intelligent, very thoughtful. In fact, sidebar, I don't know how Fife Dog never got a TV show on ESPN.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that no one was like, this is better than Around the Horn. This is better than PTI. There's 4.5 minutes of this movie about Fife Dog just giving his takes on sports, and it's better than anything you'll see on ESPN this afternoon.
Yes.
I could watch that every afternoon at 4:30 when I was in college.
Yeah.
Fife Dog talking sports, great. Fife Dog, fantastic. And I like Glenn Fry too, but I think Don Henley is the undeniable talent of that group.
Okay,
more
sure.
than Glenn Fry, and I think that's true about Q-Tip and Fife Dog.
Okay, so then you've got Q-Tip, you got Fife Dog, and then you have the other 2 members who are were always the
guys.
in the background guys, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Jerobi, who was kind of an on and off member, a vocalist, best friend of Fife Dog, seems like an amiable guy, joking around.
Q-Tip says at one point that he brings the vibe,
right?
The way they would dance. They had a very funny, jokey, geeky style.
Yeah,
and Q-Tip said that's Gyrobi.
Right.
We all took that from Gyrobi.
Right, but Gyrobi left the band at kind of when it was starting to peak in its popularity to pursue the culinary arts.
Yeah, to go be a chef.
And apparently that's what he does.
Seems like he did well. He's got a nice house. He's got beautiful kids that he seems to have a great relationship with. It's quite heartwarming.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm in love with all 4 of these guys.
Yeah. Oh,
this
sure.
movie, absolute sweethearts, all of them. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so Jerobi seems to have gotten the best deal of them all, where he left the band, he made his mark, then he left the band and went on to pursue his career that he wanted to do. But then once in a while he could drop in and do some shows or go on tour,
especially in the 2000s when they were doing
reunion tours.
Yeah.
And he hangs out with his buddies, and he's thousands of people.
Roby from the legendary band of Tribe
right?
Called
Yeah,
Quest,
but he didn't have to do a lot of work to be that. You know what I mean? It was seems like kind of an easy gig for him. And then the 4th member, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, who was
He's a DJ.
primarily a DJ producer type.
Yeah.
Unclear how much DJing and producing Q-Tip did, how much Ali Shaheed Muhammad did. Also seems like a super chill guy.
Yeah, dude. His talking head segments are fantastic.
Yeah, I'm like, more of this.
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
give me the Ali Shaheed Muhammad show.
If I have a criticism of this movie, I did not get enough Ali.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's hard because Q-Tip and Fife are such dynamic personalities, and
they demand the screen.
Whenever you see them all interacting together, Ali is never utters a word.
No.
Like, he is hanging out in the background. He's the quiet one.
Yeah.
When you get him by himself on camera, it's like he's got a lot to say. He's thoughtful. He's had this in his head for 30 years, and he wants to get it out.
Yeah.
But, and so, okay. So the story is that these guys all knew each other as kids. Like, literally, Q-Tip and Fife Dog knew each other from when they were 2 in church or something.
Yeah.
Ali and Q-Tip together went to some, like
a New York magnet school.
A magnet school. These guys are all from Queens, but they went to a New York magnet school in Manhattan.
Yeah.
That was like the High School of Business Education.
Yeah.
Which is like...
It's one of these public schools that you hear about all the time,
right,
where it's like incredibly
Bronx
competitive
Science
to get in, and,
right?
But you get in, and it's incredibly demanding,
right?
High energy, very smart kids,
yeah,
diverse group people,
right? So these are not like knuckleheads.
From Miles Morales goes to in Spider-Man.
Yes. Okay. Now this also not only is this in the Rock Doc cinematic universe, also in the Marvel cinematic universe. So I mean, these are not like knuckleheads from the street, running around with guns. Like, the like image of a rapper at that time was, because that was like in the era of NWA, Ice-T, Ice Cube. Yeah. These guys were very intelligent young men who were, gonna make their mark in the world one way or the other. And
absolutely. They're like friends.
Yeah. They were like legitimately friends, hanging out, playing basketball, chilling.
And like, it's sort of hard to imagine, and I've researched up on more of this, but like their natural friend group in late 80s New York City, it's like half of them became some very famous people.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
How many people they knew, from whether it's from like people who they became very close collaborators with, like Zulu Nation,
sure.
Zulu Nation, and
all the native tongues people,
people, and De La Soul, or like MC Light,
right,
and Talib Kweli, and Michael Rapaport,
sure, the director of this film, who went on to be a famous actor,
right,
the Beastie Boys,
the Beastie Boys, like. By all accounts, they're like riding the bus, and it's like 7 people on the bus of 25 were on MTV a year and a half later.
Right. This is one of those things where it was like London in 1964 had like 10,000 great musicians and bands, and you're like, how are they all together at the same time, at the same place? Yeah. Or like, Laurel Canyon in the 70s or something like that.
Yeah.
This is the same.
But they're teenagers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're like all on the same bus.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And these guys grew up hanging around, like Fife says, like Run DMC and LL Cool J were from our neighborhood. Like this was just what was happening.
Yeah.
The early days of hip hop, they just got into it. When they're 9 years old, they're like, we should start rhyming.
Yeah.
And they just started doing it. And then they were just unbelievably great at it, I guess. Yeah. Like eventually.
Ali Shaheed Muhammad has a really interesting story about like his apartment had a fire escape, and out across the fire escape was a schoolyard, and on Saturdays the DJs would show up and start spinning, and people would start dancing, and he would just sit out on his fire escape as a little kid and just watch it, and it was just like this intoxicating energy just like coming across his alley, and it like you hear that and it's like, no wonder half of the people on their school bus became like rewrote what American music was.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this is not one of those rock docs where it's like the band tried for years and years and years to get famous, and they got signed, and then the album came out and it was a flop, and then in terms of that side of things, it was like they just showed up in the studio, dropped classics that became big hits, and just kept on rolling. There was no transition of like we had a bunch of demos that were crappy and we couldn't find the right producer. It was like they were just geniuses the day they walked into the studio, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it seems like it. They had a friend whose cousin was Red Alert, who was like apparently a famous hip hop DJ in New York City at the time. Got him on the radio at like 10 o'clock at night on a weekend.
Yeah.
And their buddy was just like, make sure you say your name, your crew's name, and then drop a sweet rhyme.
Yeah.
And he did that.
That's all you got to do?
It was like,
yeah.
It was like, and then they, like, a very short time later, they're inking a contract for like over $400,000 advance.
Right. And these are like 18-year-olds. Right.
Like 18-year-olds.
Yeah. And they came through.
Yeah.
They delivered more than anybody could ever have expected.
I mean, their first album is a stone cold classic.
Yes.
Like walking into the studio.
Right.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he talks about how people were like, oh, are you going to have a sophomore slump? He's like, I don't believe in any of that thing. Like I don't believe in jinxes. I'm not superstitious. I just went in and did my thing. And it was Midnight Marauders. Like possibly the greatest rap album of all time.
Theory, yeah.
Oh, Low End Theory. And then,
yeah,
it's like one after the other.
One after, like all three of those are like going to be on someone's list of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. Right?
Unbelievable. And so from that perspective, it seems like a smooth ride. Like what? How is this even a movie where they're just hitting home runs left and right?
So maybe here's one of my insights on this film.
Oh, okay.
I
didn't know we were going to get insights. Prepare yourself, listener.
I think so. Stipulating that it's entirely possible that I'm just straight up wrong, but this film does not provide any reason. This doesn't provide any evidence for why Phife Dawg and Q-Tip are going to feud so intensely that the band breaks up multiple times and they go through long stretches of not talking to each other.
Right.
There is no clear explanation in this movie why that is happening.
Right.
And one reason I think for that is that it leaves out a lot of what was happening in their lives during this time.
Right.
Such as in between Low End Theory and Midnight Marauders, Q-Tip is in Poetic Justice with Janet Jackson and Tupac.
Right.
And no one else from Tribe Called Quest was in Poetic Justice with Janet Jackson and Tupac.
Right.
In 1993.
Sure.
Just Q-Tip.
Yeah.
There's like no mention in this film
Right.
that Q-Tip was becoming a superstar.
Right.
And the other guys were the guys in Tribe Called Quest.
Well, they kind of mentioned they call him like he's a kind of a reluctant superstar. He didn't really want to be that guy. He didn't want to be a big, hero. He keeps saying like it's not called Q-Tip and a Tribe Called Quest. Yeah. It's a Tribe Called Quest. Like I'm just
but you don't have no idea what that's in response to.
Right.
Because they
don't tell you. Yeah.
They're like, he's in Hollywood half the time.
Right, exactly. Now, not long ago I read this book. It's called Go Ahead in the Rain, Notes to a Tribe Called Quest by, I'm not going to pronounce this right, but Hanif Abdurraqib. My apologies for messing up your name. But it's a heck of a book. And it's kind of a meditation on Tribe Called Quest. So I've got a little bit of that. I had a little bit of that in my head when I'm watching the movie. But, the movie kind of alludes to the fact that Phife was out running around in the streets and, Q-Tip kind of like laid on him, like when they were starting to record the second album, like, hey, you got to really come in here and, do your work, do your verses. You got to focus. But, the book gets into a lot more about, Phife just, he says like he was, just got out of high school and he was running around being a knucklehead. Mm-hmm. He's not some criminal mastermind.
Yeah.
He's just being a kid.
Being a 19-year-old, yeah.
Yeah. And just the like endless efforts by Q-Tip, at least according to the book, to like get Phife to like really focus, to come into the studio, to take this seriously. Like this was a career. This was a thing they were doing. It wasn't just like another, fun activity between the party and the basketball game or the whatever, that this was something he really had to focus on. And they kind of allude to it, but he basically says like, that he just tried to focus and then he wrote this great verse on a bus and he showed up in the studio and knocked it out of the park, which I guess he did.
Yeah.
But it's incredible. I mean, when he was able to focus and deliver, he was so electric.
Right.
I'm saying was because subsequent to the movie, he passed from diabetes, which that's a whole nother thing in the movie that's interesting is,
I mean, he talks pretty openly about his health problems.
Yeah.
And not just, that he was born with type 1 diabetes, but that he was addicted to sugar.
Yeah. He literally says it's like a drug.
He's like, it's a drug for me. I'll go really well. I'll do really well for a while. I'll be okay. Then I fall apart.
Yeah.
And my health suffers incredibly.
Yeah.
I can't be on stage.
And just like, not to drop a PSA on you, but like a lot of people in America have diabetes and have troubles with sugar. Yeah. And I've never seen that addressed in a movie or documentary or anything.
Seriously.
Maybe I'm sure there's movies and stuff about diabetes out there, like if you're looking for it, but like it's real. Like this is a movie, this is a rock documentary about partly about an artist who has a serious drug problem that literally puts him in the grave, and the drug is sugar.
So I'm mixing metaphors here, but in my history of the Eagles comparison.
Yes.
So I said that Fife and Q-Tip were Henley and Fry.
Sure.
But also Fife is Joe Walsh.
Oh, Fife is definitely Joe Walsh.
Fife is totally.
He is the fun, party, goofy guy,
and
who maybe takes the party a little too hard.
Exactly. And I think History of the Eagles does a fantastic job of dealing with Walsh's sobriety and how he actually finally decided to get clean. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the better parts of that movie. So I think that works. But also, the best part about History of the Eagles is Joe Walsh saying weird off-the-wall shit.
Yeah.
And maybe the best part of this movie is Fife Dog saying weird off-the-wall shit.
Yeah.
I got some notes here.
Please.
Fife Dog.
Give me the Fife Dog gems.
So he is not into therapists.
No. Not believing it. Well, because his wife says, like...
By the way, they seem to have a fantastic relationship.
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
So, just to kind of like set the scene of what this movie is, like half an hour into this podcast. So, like, we see them come together, and then they make 5 albums, and then they break up. And, like, they basically break up over the course of making the last album.
Yeah.
Q-Tip goes on to become a successful solo artist.
Which is basically not in the movie. They don't even talk about Vibrant Thing, which is probably
one of his biggest sons,
and
if not.
Maybe bigger than like most Tribe songs.
Yeah. And, Fife kind of struggled. Ali Shaheed Muhammad, you actually see a really interesting scene with him after the band breaks up, which is he is trying to become like a producer for other artists. And you see a scene where he produces or he's working on a song with Mary J. Blige, which at the time they were filming this, she was like a huge star. And you just kind of get the vibe that like it doesn't go that great. And she at the end just says like, hey, thanks a lot. We're huge Tribe fans. We just love Tribe. We were listening to Tribe on the way here, and it was great to meet you. Like, she kind of gives them the very polite brush off.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're not going to work together, but hey, it was cool to meet you. But it's like in the context of saying, hey, I'm a huge fan of Tribe. Like, and he's out here trying to establish himself as an individual, not as a member of this group. Yeah. And all she's doing is basically saying, like, I came here because you're the guy from Tribe. I'm paying my respects, but I'm moving on.
Yeah.
And, that's... It kind of shows a little bit of those ups and downs. And then they get back together for a kind of reunion tour, basically
with Nas and
with a bunch of other a bunch of other hip hop artists, basically because of Fife's medical issues. Like he has medical bills that need to be paid. He needs a kidney transplant. And, so the movie basically goes through that and then later shows them a little bit later, like another kind of reunion, but that's kind of seems the end of the road. But it's a lot of them just like, it's a lot of the movie is them in like 2008, like years after their peak, fighting and arguing as adults doing this kind of reunion tour. And, kind of like the History of the Eagles.
Yes.
A little bit of that.
I'm winning you over on this comparison.
So you see Fife and his wife, whose name I don't recall off the top of my head, and she's trying to like say like, why can you guys not get along? Like, you guys need therapy. And that's where he drops his like, I don't believe in therapists. I'm not into that, blah, 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 blah.
For somebody to listen to
Which
me.
Really, maybe you should have, because it seems like you guys had a lot of problems.
Yeah. So
more Fife gems.
More Fife gems. So he wishes that Q-Tip would shoot him straight a little bit.
Yeah.
He says if Q-Tip did that, quote, I could respect you to the 30th power, if not more.
I love that. Love that.
If not more. So good.
Like, 30th power, I'm good with that. If not more. Wait, hold on.
Whoa, I didn't realize it. He's also talking about the disrespect he feels. He's like,
Andy, I respect you to the 30th power, but once you drop that History of the Eagles reference, you got more.
He goes, look, I'm not out here trying to be, he's Michael and I'm Tito. No disrespect to Tito.
He was doing his thing.
He's like, gets real serious with his no disrespect to Tito.
Yeah, he realizes, like, I went too far.
What am I doing? I don't have anything against Tito here. I'm just trying to explain where me and Q-Tip are standing.
Yeah, it's a lot about Q-Tip is the big star, and Fife, like people who respected and understood hip hop respected Fife, but the wider world saw Q-Tip and then a funny little guy.
Yeah,
and they even get into, and this is where we like transport to the alternate universe of the 1990s because it's a big deal when they go on Dennis Miller.
Yes.
And I'm like, how is that even a thing?
Yeah, it's surreal seeing Dennis Miller go, so Q, what happened to Fife?
Yeah. Well, so what happens is they were going on Dennis Miller, and I guess, on tour, Fife had issues with his diabetes and had to go to Cedars-Sinai. So basically Dennis Miller says, like, okay, we have the group Tribe Called Quest. One of their members, Fife Dog, unfortunately had to go to the hospital with a medical issue, but the rest of the band is here to do their raps for you. Yeah. And I'm just like, what? Are you a billion years old? Like, you were supposed to be the cool guy.
They got you from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, exactly.
To do this show.
Yeah, I think people listening now, younger people, may not understand the concept that Dennis Miller was ever considered a cool guy, or that he even existed.
In fact, it's hard to... Did he?
If you've never heard of Dennis Miller, don't bother looking him up. Yeah. Do yourself a favor.
Skip it. It's fine.
We're not here to bash people, but,
Except Dennis Miller. Fuck that guy.
Whatever. If you want to come on and defend yourself next episode, Dennis, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So they do an appearance without Fife, which is like, hey, it's the Beatles without Paul McCartney or something, you know, and then like he goes over and like sticks the mic in Q-Tip's face, and he's like, "Where's your buddy Fife Dog?" And he's like, "Well, he's got diabetes and he had some trouble because we just flew in here on tour and he's been having some health issues." Like, it's heavy, like he's really upset. And Dennis Miller's like, "Okay, well, thank you for performing. Good luck to you guys." It's just a total disconnect.
Yes,
where it was like, kind of like, here's these goofy rapper dudes, but these are real people with real issues.
Yes. So also around this time, I can't remember if it's for Beats, Rhymes, and Life, or their final album, but the executive says that they have to go yank the album away from him.
Right.
That he's a danger of becoming Axl Rose with Chinese Vacation?
Chinese Democracy.
Permanent Vacation, Chinese Democracy.
Same thing.
Or Dr. Dre with his
Endless
album, right?
Yeah. Basically, that Q-Tip is like this tortured genius perfectionist who will never let go of anything until he's physically forced to.
Yeah, and Fife talks about it too. They're like, we'll be together, it'll sound great. 2 days later, he's like, no, we're throwing that in the trash.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, I think I wouldn't call it a criticism of the movie, but I think the movie is a little bit unwilling to plumb why there is resentment within the group,
right,
about Q's fame,
right. Yeah, I don't know why they kind of avoid that.
I mean, like, Vibrant Thing was a gigantic song that he produced almost immediately,
right
after the group breaks up.
Yeah, I think he's embarrassed about it though.
I totally get why he doesn't want to talk
because the video is kind of like cheesy and that Hype Williams,
and it was not respected. I mean, like the Tribe fans didn't like it.
No, I remember when it came out, I was like, "This is garbage."
Yeah, it's kind of good now.
I mean, sure, but back in the day, I was like, Tribe broke up. Now you're coming out with this.
It and it kind of was like more like what Puffy was doing.
Yes, it was very much on that Puffy Mace situation. Same, kind of style,
which
video.
was not what Tribe Called Quest did,
right?
At all,
right? It's I don't know. They kind of, I mean, look. Imagine you've been like a 16-year-old boy, as have I.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but, put yourself back in those shoes.
Yeah.
Imagine you're Fife Dog. Uh-huh. You're a not particularly tall, not particularly classically handsome young man, and your best friends are Q-Tip and Ali Shaheed Muhammad.
Yeah,
who are like,
first of all, Ali Shaheed Muhammad looks like he is ripped up.
oh my god, the guy is shredded.
Dude is shredded. But like that, like natural shred that looks like maybe he doesn't actually spend that much time in the gym.
Right,
just like fantastic.
Kind of eats right, and goes for a jog once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, those are two extremely good-looking, extremely charismatic guys.
Yes.
Like, imagine your best friends are those two guys, and you're trying to make it in the world. Like that, like in and of itself, is going to put a chip on your shoulder.
That part when their first album or their first video is "Left My Wallet in El Segundo," which is a great song in my opinion.
Yes, of all the songs about El Segundo, by far my favorite.
Yeah, totally. And that Q-Tip does like a bit about why he wrote that song because he remembered Sanford's son.
Right.
Sanford used to
make jokes about El Segundo.
About El Segundo, and he does like a Sanford impression, and it's just like, all right, call the studios, get this guy on TV.
Yeah.
Like he could do anything.
Right.
Character actor, leading man, whatever.
Right.
Like so much charisma.
Yeah. Like you see him in this movie in every form of dress that a like human male can wear.
Like outside in the winter wearing like a felt trench coat.
Yeah. Like a cool, 30s style hat, fedora thing.
Yeah.
Versus, or when he's younger, wearing a dashiki. Sometimes he's just wearing a t-shirt. So everything looks good on this guy.
Yeah.
Like he is just unbelievably like stylish.
Yeah.
And a brilliant musician and well-spoken and just every single thing you can think of.
Yes.
He just has it all.
He does.
And it's almost kind of like, why didn't he become even a bigger star?
It is a perfectly reasonable question. Why didn't he become a bigger star?
Yeah.
I mean, like, Mos Def has had a better acting career than Q-Tip.
Right.
I don't know. Is Mos Def more charismatic than Q-Tip?
I don't know.
If I'm casting a movie tomorrow, I'm casting Q-Tip.
I don't know.
I like them both, though.
No knock
on.
on.
If I'm honest, I always thought Mos Def was a pretty good actor.
But, I mean, in terms of rappers who became big actors, I mean, you got Will Smith.
Will Smith, yes, sure. Tupac.
Tupac
was on his way.
Right, but if you told somebody in like 1990, like who are you going to bet on, Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest or The Fresh Prince? Kind of probably would have gone. Maybe would have gone with Q-Tip.
You might have gone with Q-Tip, frankly.
Right?
Yeah.
It turns out Will Smith is like one of the most popular movie actors for the last 30 years. So I probably would have been wrong about that too.
and Q-Tip is apparently like good pals with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay, I can see it.
Yeah, I gathered that. So.
I don't think there's ever been anybody who's like, do you want to go hang out with Q-Tip? They're like, nah, it doesn't sound like a good time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I remember when I was a kid, I had we talked about like VHS, like poorly produced documentaries.
Yes.
I had one about one of the Chicago Bulls teams when I was a kid.
Right.
And there's a scene when Michael Jordan tells the bus that he can call Janet Jackson.
Okay.
Right then.
Right.
And they're like, fuck you. No, you can't. And he picks up the phone. He calls Janet Jackson. And they're all just like, oh, my God. I forgot. Like a Martian rides the bus with us. Like, this is crazy.
Like a god from Olympus.
Yeah. Like, oh, my God. Like, Janet Jackson is so famous.
Right.
That they forget that they're with Michael Jordan.
She's been famous their whole lives.
Their whole life. She's way more famous than them. And, like, I feel like Q-Tip's kind of like that.
Right.
Like Leonardo DiCaprio would be like starstruck to be like, oh, I will definitely go out to the club with Q-Tip tonight.
Yeah. It just seems like he's like the kind of guy where he has such good taste. Like I've seen him interviewed in other documentaries where he's like, I don't know if it's his apartment, his house, his whatever, or someplace, but like he's like surrounded by like this fantastic modern art that I don't even necessarily like understand or whatever, but it seems like the kind of thing where he had the taste to like buy stuff in 1991 with his like money from, scenario and
probably just like going down the Lower East Side and walking into boutiques.
And now
that could just be like yep.
Pieces he bought for $10,000 are worth $10 million. It just seems like that kind of guy.
Well, he talks at one point about like going record shopping, like when they're talking about while they're traveling when they're in their first couple records,
right?
And they're just like, well, all Q did was go hunt for records.
Right.
Like he had no other interests.
Right.
He had no other hobbies.
You don't really see them partying.
No, and you don't see any of them partying really.
Right.
No. And I had kind of always had like, I know about these like dumpster divers and that's like that like DJs and hip hop, like aspiring hip hop stars all
crate digging,
all recognize that like this was the instrument.
Right.
So the way you differentiate yourself was have records that no one else has.
Right.
And that like there were these record trading and like flea market type deals in New York that you would have to get to
right
first thing.
Yeah.
Because it was going to be picked over in an hour.
Right.
And I was always like kind of confused, like, do these guys just all have an encyclopedic understanding of American music that they can just walk into a flea market, a bunch of rows of records, and they know everything, so they know what they're looking at? Or do they have some sort of like preternatural sense about like there's probably going to be something interesting on this?
Yeah.
Based on like names that they see on the back or like the cover or whatever. And Q talks about like one of the records where he's just like, I just looked at the style of this and like it looked like straight 70s soul. And like he's like, look at what he's wearing.
Yeah.
And he like goes on the back and he's
like,
with
this girl and he's got this Lincoln. My uncle had that same Lincoln.
My uncle had that same Lincoln. And it's like, and he gets the bars from this song, from this record that become like, Can I Kick It? I think.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, what?
Right.
Like, this is how it came together?
Yeah, exactly.
This is the process?
Yes.
Like maybe somebody is, more of a musicologist than I am and can tell me that like I'm missing something here. But
that's his version.
That's his version of it.
That's his version of it. Who am I to say?
Yeah.
Another thing I want to shout out about this movie is the style of the movie. Really captures Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah.
Like there are these animations and like the music is by Madlib, who's clearly like hugely influenced by Tribe Called Quest. So like when you're not hearing Tribe's music, like the music that's underlying is by other really high quality artists and composers. And it's got these animations because especially the first few Tribe albums had these very like Afrocentric images on the covers and things like that, and they really take off on that, and not in a cheesy way. Like it really works, and it's just an interesting stylistic choice to kind of make that era come alive.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It was really clear that Michael Rapaport, who we can talk about, apparently was like really involved in this era personally, to like sort of create that through the music and through the animations and other things to create the feeling of what it was like to be around this kind of explosion of artistic creativity.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think that's important for this band specific because like their aesthetic early was such a big part of who they were,
right? And
not just them, but like De La Soul, Zulu Nation, Native Tongues in general. It was like very Afrocentric.
Yeah.
Very deliberately so. It distinguished them from everything else that was going on in hip hop at the time.
Right. They like made very specific choices as very young people.
Yes.
That really held up.
Yes. And yeah, and I do think it comes across in the movie a lot. And yeah, it's interesting. The animations are really well done.
Yeah.
And it's basically the art. It's like the cover art from
Midnight Marauders
and Low End Theory come to life, basically.
Yeah. Just even early in the movie, they get into that, and it's like, wow, this really takes you into that world.
Yeah, it's a really well done. It's a very well done documentary. So, first of all, like these four guys, I think, like there's a lot of tension between them.
Yeah,
and it ends up breaking up the band multiple times.
Right,
and
even when they reunite, I mean, they are at each other's throats.
And there's a camera there.
Yeah,
I mean, you say how much of it seems to have taken place in 2008. I think it's because they had started making the movie,
right?
And so Rapaport's just backstage with a camera,
right? And it's like almost uncomfortable.
It's quite uncomfortable.
Just seeing
long
shots. They're not violent. There's no physical altercations. There's no sense that somebody is like completely messed up on drugs or alcohol. No. It's not that kind of situation. It is just like interpersonal tension with people that have known each other their whole lives, like family.
Yeah.
It really was like watching a family fight. Where like if you went to somebody's Thanksgiving and they all started fighting and you were sitting at the table and you're like, okay, how do I get it? Like it was that kind of feeling.
And so I guess this was what I was about to say, is that like it comes across clear as day. These dudes love each other.
Right.
These dudes absolutely love each other. And bands say that a lot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really come across. It seems like, especially later on, it's like, well, those are some guys I knew when I was young. We made some songs together. Now we tour once a year. Like, these four dudes clearly love each other.
Yeah.
Unlike just about anything you'll see in music.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of times where Jerobi is physically supporting Fife on stage.
Yes.
And they talk about it. Like,
Jerobi breaks down crying just thinking about how much he loves Fife Dog.
Jerobi's a big dude.
Yeah.
Just tall, strapping dude. Mm-hmm. And Fife is notoriously a short, sickly person.
Yeah, funky diabetic.
Yeah, the funky diabetic, the 5-foot assassin. And he, there's times when they show him on stage and they talk about it where, like, if you had seen the show in 2008, you would have been like, oh, cool, they're just hanging out. And it's kind of like you see Fife leaning on Jerobi, and it's just kind of their style. They're so close to it together, they're leaning on each other. But it was like Fife physically was ill, like suffering from diabetes, and was not treating his body well, and could not stand. Like, he needed Jerobi to be the person that he leaned on in order to stand there and deliver the music that he needed to do. Yeah. And somehow it's so charismatic that it comes across.
Right.
And I don't think the people in the audience, unless they knew what was going on, would have been able to detect that this is a person who, is really suffering physically, because they're just projecting so much. I mean, all four of these guys are just so charismatic.
Yes.
They're so cool. There's no villains in this story.
There's no villains in the story. And like, even when Fife's, there's a couple times where Fife's on camera and he's talking about basically like how mad he is at Q-Tip.
Yeah.
And he interrupts himself every time to be like, look, I love him.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah. But sometimes Q-Tip seems a little aloof.
So Q-Tip does seem a little bit aloof. I mean, Q-Tip basically seems like it's not his feud.
Yeah.
Like, he seems like he wants to be yelling all the time, like, he is mad at me.
Right.
All I want to do is my own shit. Like, I don't need this.
Right.
He's
like, all I want to do is make music. I love music. I'm out here making music.
Yeah.
When Tribe Called Quest broke up, I went off and made music.
Yeah.
As a solo artist, or he did stuff with Ali Shaheed Muhammad. Like, he just seems like he was, in his mind, he was just doing the thing that he was always doing. Yeah, and like, somehow people got mad.
Yeah, he wants to be like, can I opt out of this fight?
Right.
Is there like a no thank you option to this feud?
And he's like, I went on this tour because Fife asked us to do it because he needed the money.
Yeah.
And now he's causing problems, or he's not taking care of himself and is like physically jeopardizing the shows. And I didn't have to do that. I'm Q-Tip. Yeah. I got all the options in the world.
Yeah, and so like there's one moment on stage where Fife is like leaning on Jerobi, and Q says what sounds like in the midst of a rhyme.
Right.
He says, "Yo, look alive, Fife."
Yeah. And
Fife is like incensed by this.
Right. As an audience member, you would have just been like, "Yeah, that's a cool thing to say."
Like, "Yo, look alive, Fife." Like,
sure.
That sounds like a Tribe rap.
Right. Exactly. But really, he was basically like dissing his guy, like, hey, you got to show up on stage. You got to deliver the performance.
Right. So Michael Rapaport
delivered the goods, man.
Dude, good documentary.
Just the guy knows what he directed this documentary. It was 2011. It's 10 years later as we're recording this. Shout out to Michael Rapaport. Direct more movies.
Yeah, man, dude. Like,
figure it out, or somebody give this guy a check.
I'm sure you were into Nas. Like, you want to do a Nas documentary? I would watch that.
De La Soul,
Black
whatever.
Star, like
whoever you got.
All of these would be great,
or whatever, or just any other thing you want to do.
Yeah,
I went from. I mean, I didn't have an opinion one way. That it's not that I didn't like the guy. It's just like he was just a guy, whatever.
Yeah.
And now I watch this and I'm like, this guy's got something that we didn't see.
Yeah, totally. He clearly has good taste.
Yeah.
I mean, like this whole movie is just tasteful.
Yeah.
Not just the subject matter. That's like a good way to describe Tribe Called Quest. Good way to describe this movie. Michael Rapaport's directorial choices, all incredibly tasteful.
Yeah, respectful. Like Tribe Called Quest is beloved.
Yeah.
These people are beloved. You can hear from the way we're talking about it that we care about these people after watching this movie and being fans of this music. And yeah, that comes across. Now, is it bad podcasting if I just drop in the fact that I saw Tribe Called Quest
No,
perform?
that's good podcasting. When did you do that?
Lollapalooza in 1994.
Ooh, that's a good
San Diego
one.
State University. Me and my buddy Eitan Altman. Shout out to Eitan. As I'm recording this, it is his birthday.
All right.
So
Happy
shout out to
birthday,
Eitan. And we're still friends. And we went to see. Now, the reason why I didn't go, like the Beastie Boys are playing, all these other acts, but I was stoked to see Tribe Called Quest. Not that I was some hardcore Tribe fan at the time because I wasn't like up to speed necessarily, but I knew him mostly. I knew Q-Tip mostly from his verse on a Beastie Boys song.
Right.
And so, like, if you were a nerdy white guy in the early to mid '90s who liked hip hop, then you would have heard Q-Tip that way because that's kind of the stuff. I mean, I'm sure I'd heard Scenario. They were on In Living Color. I'd seen them there. I knew I knew like half a dozen of the songs or whatever. But I'm not claiming that I was with them from day one. I would know Michael Rapaport.
Well, right. So Rapaport, my incorrect memory of this movie when it came out was that it came out much more recently than 2011.
Yeah.
And that there was some controversy around it because of Michael Rapaport.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had presumed that was because he was just a fan.
Right.
And like wasn't the right guy to tell their story.
Yeah.
And at least partially because he's a white guy.
Notably a white
Right.
guy.
And boy, did I have all that wrong.
Okay.
One, he's totally the right guy to tell this story. He was there.
Mm-hmm.
He's like friends with these guys.
Yeah.
Specifically, he was like seems to be like very good friends with Talib Kweli,
Yeah.
who was not. He was, I think, like a little bit after these guys,
Right.
The next generation.
Sure.
But he was from that part of New York. He knew all these dudes. He knew MC Light. He's talking about, and he was very much a part of this golden era of New York City hip hop.
Right.
He was called White Mike.
White Mike.
White
Sure.
Mike. Everyone called him White Mike. He was good at basketball and he was good at talking shit.
Yeah.
And that gave him credibility
Yeah.
in places that a white dude wouldn't normally have credibility.
Right.
So he knew a lot of these people, had good relationship. He had a good relationship with Q-Tip. He was in Poetic Justice with Q-Tip.
Yep. True. Okay. And Tupac.
And Tupac
Janet
Janet
Jackson.
Jackson. Might be some other rappers in that movie too.
Okay. Now,
Maya Angelou.
when I was, when my first job was working in a movie theater, AMC Theaters in Encinitas, north of San Diego. I was 16. And one of the perks of that job was that you got to see the movies for free.
Yeah.
But the negative was you just had to like end up, just because you were cleaning the theater, we were doing whatever, like you just had to see these movies over and over. So Poetic Justice, although I have not seen it since it came out, I saw it 37 times that summer.
I'm here to tell you, the barbecue scene in Poetic Justice, that's great.
Still holds up.
That is great cinema. And like Tupac, movie star.
Okay.
Tupac in the barbecue scene in Poetic Justice is an absolute bona fide movie star.
Okay. Okay.
Now, the rest of that movie got some problems.
Mostly my memory of that movie is being in the theater, cleaning up after, like, it's the late show. There's nobody there. They're still running the movie. And I'm trying to clean up under the seats to see if anybody dropped money. Because if in those days, at least, if you worked in a movie theater and somebody dropped money, you got to keep it. That was one of the perks.
A lot of perks for this.
Often you would make more money
that way
cleaning the theater than you would actually from your pay.
Yeah. So the controversy that I misunderstood at the time that this came out, basically the way I understand this is, an early trailer for this movie came out and reported the title of this movie not as Beat Rhymes and Life, but Beats, Rhymes, and Fights.
Ooh.
And Q-Tip saw it and did not like that.
Right. And Rapaport said basically like, that wasn't really the title. We were just throwing ideas out there.
Yeah.
And somehow it got leaked.
Which I kind of question if that's true. willing to bet that maybe they wanted that to be the title, and they did release it, and then they heard Q-Tip didn't like it, and they moved back and said that it was leaked.
Yeah.
I have no evidence of that.
Okay.
But I question the official narrative of the Beats, Rhymes, and Fights scandal.
That could be his own rock doc.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. The truth is out there.
Yeah.
But I think that is not true.
Okay.
What Rapaport said. But in any case, Q-Tip apparently didn't do promo for this movie.
Yeah.
He because of this anger. Rapaport has a pretty good take on it these days. He was on the Talib Kweli podcast last year and basically said, look, it's not the first time ever that a documentary director had a minor disagreement with the subject.
Right.
That's normal and that's okay.
Yeah.
And we're fine now. He had some things he didn't like about it. We worked through it.
Now he stands by it.
It's fine.
Right.
So I think I just kind of swung and missed on what the controversy around this movie was.
Yeah.
And I also just from Rapaport's persona, if you don't know who Michael Rapaport is, tall, goofy, redhead dude. He becomes a skinhead in Higher Learning. I believe he's like a mailman in Next Friday.
Sure.
He's in True Romance.
Sure. Mighty
Beautiful
Aphrodite.
Girls.
A lot of big movies from the 90s.
A lot of big movies.
Now he's
from
kind
the
of
90s.
known, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, as kind of a loudmouth, sports obsessed, not necessarily right wing, but grumpy old guy who's not stoked on how the culture is going.
Yeah. He's he's a little bit more
New York
complicated
guy.
than that even. He's left wing. He spends most of his time calling Laura Ingraham a racist.
No. He hates Donald Trump.
And hates Donald Trump, but also despises cancel culture.
Right, exactly. He's just all over the place.
He's just all over the place.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
And so I thought there was going to be a lot of Michael Rapaport in the movie.
Right.
I thought he would be in front of the camera talking about how much Tribe Called Quest meant to him.
Right, but I caught his face in one frame of the movie.
And,
You barely see him. He is interviewing, so occasionally you hear his voice, but it's never about him. He is clearly not the subject of the movie.
Absolutely not.
Nor should he be.
And I don't know if this has come across. I love this movie.
Yeah.
And I think he did an incredible job directing this movie. But I do think there's this funny thing in the very beginning when he's there's a clip with Q saying they walk off stage and Rapaport asks him, is that the last show? Mm-hmm. And Q-Tip's angry.
Yeah.
And he's like, did you ask everybody else that?
Yeah.
And Rapaport's like, yeah, I asked everybody else that. He's like, well, what did they say? Is it done, right? And he's like, yeah, they all said it's done. And Q-Tip's like, well, then why are you asking me? It's fine. It's done. I would like to posit, I don't think Michael Rapaport asked everybody else that question.
Definitely.
Right?
Another thing Q-Tip
He's
said...
tiptoeing around Q-Tip a lot.
Q-Tip says the only time we'll ever get together again is if we're inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which has not happened.
And I know
to the eternal shame of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
This is a passion project of yours.
Yes, being angry about who's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is something I spend a lot of time doing.
They should be.
Come
Obviously.
on, burn that place down if they're not it.
Yeah. Also, Fish should be.
Okay,
We can agree on that.
so let me just say,
Yeah.
as we record this,
Yeah.
Andy and I both have 4-year-olds.
Yes. They're asleep right now. It's
They're
late at
asleep.
night. We're doing fine.
God willing. You also have a 1-year-old, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, one of your children comes to you and says, "Father,
Yeah.
I want to learn about hip hop, rap music."
Yeah. I would play them this movie.
Yeah, if Miles, my kid, came to me and said, "I want to learn about rap or learn about hip," or just forget about the movie, but just play me some hip hop. What's the best rap music? What do I need to know? I would start with Tribe Called Quest.
Absolutely.
Literally, not even. I wouldn't even think about
it
it.
all.
What's that?
You don't have to worry about language.
A little bit, but not too much.
Not really. Yeah,
it's not violent. It's not aggressive.
And even the sexual stuff is funny. It's
Yeah.
It's wordplay.
It's not even that. Let's say they're older and they just never got into it.
15.
Yeah.
You play, and you don't have to worry about.
Miles
that.
comes to me and says, "Dad, play me some hip hop. I've just never checked it out. I want to get into it." Tribe Called Quest. That's where we start.
That's where you start. Yeah.
Then you can go back and you can go forward, but you got to start. To me, who am I to say? But they are the greatest. They're at the peak.
That's it.
Do you disagree? Just for the sake of the podcast, make it interesting.
Disagree. I
No, they're so
I was
good.
Thinking today. I was thinking today because I was thinking back to my relationship with Tribe Called Quest, and I love this band, and I have for a pretty long time, since I was 5th or 6th grade. And I was thinking, like, what was bigger? And I do think that the biggest album, the album I remember, it was impossible not to have an opinion about.
Right.
Was Wu-Tang Forever.
Yeah.
When
Wu-Tang
I was in,
Forever.
When I was in, not 36 Chambers.
Yeah, sure.
36
Okay.
Chambers is obviously a better album.
Well, I mean,
But-
you can say whatever you want to say. I'm just saying.
My age,
Right.
when we were in 7th grade and Wu-Tang Forever came out,
Right. Once again, we're going to get into the vast gulfs between our ages.
you had to have really well-formed opinions about every track on Wu-Tang Forever.
Both CDs.
Which is a bloated album.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's going to take up your whole weekend just to kind of break it down.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening.
So I don't know. I do have a lot of love for Wu-Tang, but
Yeah.
No, you could do a lot worse than introducing them to hip hop through Tribe Called Quest.
All right. So I think there's going to be almost no controversy whatsoever.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes to you,
Blanket recommendation.
somebody comes to you, they don't know anything about Tribe Called Quest, they don't even necessarily know that much about hip hop, do you recommend this movie?
The problem is they're not going to come up to me. I am going to take up a stand on the corner of Broadway and 30th, and I'm just going to be yelling to people that they need to watch this movie.
For crying out loud, stop what you're doing. Why have you
Why
not
are you
seen
all
this
going
movie?
to work right now? It's not a single one of you is watching Beats, Rhymes, and Life.
It is so good. I mean, this is a movie where you've got 4 characters and they all are awesome.
Yeah, well, so a couple people
all I want is more of all 4 of them.
Yeah, well,
Like it's not like I just want more Bajarobi, which I do, or more Ali Shaheed Muhammad. I want more there's
I certainly don't want more of them at the expense of Q-Tip and Fife.
No, please.
No.
I just need more.
The segment where where Fife is explaining his top 5 little men in NBA history,
Oh my god.
or his top 5 running backs.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is
Why did nobody while he was alive just film endless hours of him breaking down his sports takes for posterity?
It is so the Venn diagram
For
of my
future
interests.
generations.
Like I'm like sitting at home being like, Fife, who are your top 5 college quarterbacks of all time? Like, I have so many more questions for you.
Yes. So, yeah.
So there's that. Other people who really star in this movie, Questlove.
Questlove, yeah.
I mean,
A little bit.
You come to expect it from Questlove, but like, drop some like stuff like Low End Theory Midnight Marauders and 36 Chambers dropped on the same day in October 1993, which he considers the last day in the golden era of hip hop.
Yeah.
Just like, all right.
Well,
Questlove,
if you say so, Questlove, if you said it, who might argue? Yeah.
Yeah. And Pharrell.
Oh yeah, my God, we haven't even gotten into Pharrell.
Dude, Pharrell, like, again, like, as obvious as it is that the 4 members of Tribe Called Quest love each other,
Yeah.
it could not be more obvious that this music has had a deeply personal impact on Pharrell Williams' life.
Right.
And that he is, like, still processing how important it is to him.
Yeah, like Pharrell Williams has been a huge superstar, producer, singer, everything for
Forever.
decades.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's basically crying in this movie about how much he loves these people and this music.
Yeah.
He's so vulnerable and so straight up about it. He's like, I wouldn't even be here talking to you.
Yeah.
I wonder if they try to get Kanye, because Kanye was clearly influenced by them.
And there's like a clip of him in the movie.
Yeah, but he's not.
For, like, a
he
split
doesn't
second.
talk.
Jay Dilla's not in the movie. I think that's interesting. Because
But wasn't he already dead by the time they made it?
Yes. 2011. I don't know, when did he die?
I think it was mid 2000s. But
or
maybe he was already sick.
Okay.
Yeah. Jay Dilla, great producer, produced the Low End Theory, the Love Movement, which was their last album before they did come out with an album which was released posthumously after Fife died a few years ago, and it's great as well. So even the stuff they did after this movie, also great. Yeah. Give me another Rapaport. Do the bonus extra hour about what happened after.
Quit fucking around with Bleacher Report or Barstool. I think it's
Give us-
Barstool. Quit fucking around with Barstool.
Give us
Make a
further
sequel.
travels of Tribe Called Quest. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's I think you can tell that we enjoyed this movie. I hope you enjoyed this podcast a tiny bit as much as we enjoyed this movie. That would be a huge success. If you did that, I would respect you to the 30th power, if not more.
Not more.
Thank you so much for listening to Rock Docs. Goodbye.